All right, this is the first week of a series of things that I want to talk about in discussing the miracles in the book of John. Now, if you're not familiar with it, there are four what we call gospels in the Bible, and the gospel just means good news. So there are four writers, a guy by the name of Matthew, who wrote the story of Jesus, a guy by the name of Mark, also a disciple who wrote the story of Jesus, a guy named by the name of Luke, who wrote also another book that we call a gospel, the good news, the story of Jesus Christ. The fourth one, a guy by the name of John. John's gospel, if you will, his story of the life of Jesus is really very different. Not different in fact, but different in the way that he presents the story of Christ. There's a very intentional way as he tells the stories of who Jesus is and what he did. In this book of John, he chooses 7 of the many miracles that Jesus performed while he was here on the earth. He was a great miracle worker in that if you read the other stories of Jesus, of the Gospels, of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, then you will find that there are many other miracles that Jesus did. But John chooses 7 in particular, proving something about this man Jesus, who he is and what he did. And in each of those miracles, there's a lesson, and probably many lessons that we can pull from it. There are 7 of them, and we're going to go through those 7 in the weeks to come. Today, the very first one, in chapter 2 of this book of John, tells the story of Jesus turning water into wine. Now, why would he do that, and what's all that about? We will discuss a little bit of that today. The Gospel of John, chapter 2, and I'll read verses 1 through 11. The verses are on your handout if you'd like to follow along on that. Let's read this story. Verse 1 begins this way. The next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out during the festivities, so Jesus' mother told him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, that's not our problem," Jesus apparently said. Now, that's not rude. It might sound a little bit rude, but if you remember the story of Jesus on the cross, he actually uses the same word. He looks at Mary, his mother, who was at the foot of the cross, and he said, "Woman," actually using the same term, "behold your son," pointing to John, the same one who wrote this. So it wasn't rude. It would have been rude if he had said, "Mary." That would have been rude. But he said, "Woman, that's not our problem," Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." But his mother told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Let me go on in the story. Standing nearby, there were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. So you're talking 120 to 180 gallons, which translates to somewhere between 400 and 700 liters, which is quite a bit of water. These were big stone jars that were used for this water, and usually it was carried in frames that would be carried by 2, 3, even 4 servants, depending on the size of them. When the jars had been filled, he said, "Now dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies." So the servants followed his instructions. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over. That must have been a little bit nervous there. What's going on? "A host," he said, "always serves the best wine first. Then when everybody has had a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive wine. But you have kept the best until now." This miraculous sign at Cana was the first time Jesus revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, what a great story. Some try to make this story somehow some kind of treatise on alcohol. Jesus is okay with getting really loaded, and it's really not what this story is about. Some try to kind of bend it that way, and And so my message today has nothing to do with drinking. I don't think this miracle has any more to do with drinking than when Jesus multiplied the bread and the fish has anything to do with opening a fish and chips franchise. I don't think it has anything to do with any of that. It has everything to do with what Jesus was wanting to communicate in doing something for this couple and in this setting. Now, his power was known, first of all. His power was known, especially to those who were close to him. Now, the power of Jesus is sometimes thought of as some kind of a answer me Jesus magic doll that somehow we can, if you look at this, you kind of shake it up and you look at the bottom of it and it's supposed to give you some kind of answer. These are not for sale at the information table today. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if this is a real thing. I can't imagine personally, but it may be. When they invited Jesus to this feast, it had nothing to do with anything like this. I do find it amazing that they invited him, though. I think it probably has something to do in some ways that they were reputable people in the community. Jesus was a carpenter by trade, as was his father. He was trained not only in woodworking, but probably in metal and stone working in most likelihood. He was a man who worked with his hands. And these people were very important people in the community. Things broke. If you wanted a chair, if you wanted a table, if you wanted a wheel for your cart, if you needed something repaired anywhere, this kind of trade was the one that was called upon in order to repair something that had broken down in their house. So Jesus was no doubt a very reputable person of the community, and because of that, to be invited to a wedding was a very natural thing. He shows up this wedding not as some kind of personal insurance policy just in case something broke, but because he was a reputable person. The second thing is that I find it amazing that somehow Christians in particular seem to get the feeling that working is some kind of how shall I put it, some kind of necessary evil in life. Well, we only have to work because, and in reality, I don't think so at all. I believe that you are a part of the world's economy, and as such, you should be reputable people in your community. If you have a job that has been given to you, let me just mention today, we should do it with excellence. We should be on time. Listen to me, you should be on time. On time, you know what that means? That doesn't mean like after the time you're supposed to be there. When they tell you you're supposed to be there at 8, we should probably be there at 8. Stay till you're supposed to. Take your lunch breaks like you're supposed to. And you say, well, what does that have to do with this story of Jesus? Listen, Jesus was a reputable person in the community. And besides all that, one of the followers of Jesus by the name of Paul wrote a letter, an epistle, to a man by the name of Titus. Listen to what he says. He addresses the slaves in the community. And remember that slaves in that day and age were not like we imagine slaves, as in always in chains and beaten and starved. In reality, the slaves were the workers of the day. They were the laborers. They were the people who did the common kind of jobs that the Romans considered themselves too high and mighty to do. Us, for example, we are the workers. Listen to what Paul wrote. You should obey your masters, your employers, and do your best to please them. They shouldn't talk back or steal. What is that saying? Be honest. Show respect to people who are over you. You should show yourselves to be entirely trustworthy and good. Trustworthy and good. What does that say to you? I give you a project. I give you a job. I give you a thing to write or a thing to produce. A cheesecake to make. Make it good. Do your job with excellence, he's saying. Why? Listen to this. Then they will make the teaching about God our Savior attractive in every way. Say, well, I thought I was supposed to just be all preachy on the job and always quoting scriptures. You know what? Do your job. You're here in Vietnam? Do your job. Be a reputable person. Be the best employee you could ever possibly be. Because it is in that way that you adorn. This passage even actually says that you will show that the teaching about Christ is attractive in every way. Jesus, his family, their profession was respected, and they were invited to parties and weddings. I don't think that they, like I said earlier, they invited Jesus in case some special miracle was needed. In case somebody fell and broke their leg, that Jesus could heal them. No, he wasn't doing any of that yet. It wasn't why he was invited. He was invited because he was a reputable member of the community. Somebody who was respected, somebody who was needed. And they invited him to a party. We should be invited to parties, and you should go. Somebody say, yes. Throw a party. I'll come. Jesus and his family were good to be with. Are you? I hope we are. Mary told the servants, obey him. There are pitchers over here. Jesus said, let's use them. This is where Jesus was engaged in the need. I want us to review just a few other statements in this same story of Jesus. There are 7 times that Jesus said, I am. Very interesting. There are 7 of them. Let's look at them. The back of your sheet will have some of them. John chapter 6, verse 35. First of all, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry again. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. What is Jesus saying here? He is saying, I satisfy the deepest, most basic needs that you have. John 8, chapter 12, the second one says, Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. The light that leads to life. Jesus is saying, I give light. The third one is found in John chapter 10 and verse 9. Yes, he said, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and they will go freely. And they will find pasture. Jesus here is saying, I give access. I give access to the things that you need. The fourth one, John chapter 10, verse 11, says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. He is saying here, I guide you to the places that you need, and I provide what you have need of. John 11, verse 25 says, Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. Jesus here is saying, I give life. Are you getting the feeling of what Jesus is saying in these? John 14 and verse 6, a very familiar passage, says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except by me. Jesus, through this, in these 3 words, way, truth, and life, he is in reality defining reality. The way, the reality of life. The reality of truth. Jesus is saying, you say, well, I just don't know if I can swallow that. I'm just telling you what Jesus said he was. He's not saying I can provide. He's not saying I can pull a rabbit out of the hat occasionally. He is describing who he said he was. The last one is found in John 15 and verse 5. Here he says, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who remain in me, and I in them will produce much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Jesus here is saying, I will sustain you. I sustain. This is the guest at this wedding.